In the glittering, ruthless world of Hollywood, silence can sometimes be louder than 1,000 words. No one embodies this better than Johnny Depp, a man who weathered some of the most vicious storms imaginable without ever launching into public tirades or messy battles. Instead, Depp chose a strategy so subtle, so brilliantly calculated, that many didn't realize he was fighting back until he had already won. In the face of betrayal, public humiliation, and near-career destruction, Johnny Depp's refusal to engage in the mudslinging that his enemies embraced was not a sign of weakness. It was his most powerful weapon. When accusations against Depp first surfaced, the world watched with bated breath as the media swiftly turned against him. Tabloid headlines screamed in judgment, casting him as a villain without waiting for evidence. Many who had once celebrated him quickly distanced themselves, eager to avoid the fallout. Friends became strangers, studios severed ties, and the industry that once hailed him as a genius quietly began erasing his name from projects he had spent years building. Any lesser person might have lashed out in anger, issuing public rebuttals, calling out the hypocrisy and airing the dirty laundry of those who had betrayed him. But not Johnny Depp. Instead, he withdrew from the noise, choosing silence over spectacle. To the public eye, it appeared as though he had been defeated. In reality, he was simply stepping back to let the truth, untainted by his own rage, speak for itself. His enemies underestimated him gravely. They assumed that because he was not fighting loudly, he was not fighting at all. What they failed to understand was that Johnny Depp had always been a master of nuance. Throughout his career, he had played characters who said little but conveyed everything with a glance, a gesture, a pause. He understood that true power often lies in restraint. Instead of wasting his energy screaming into the void, he began meticulously building his case in silence. Behind the scenes, Depp assembled a legal team not just to defend him, but to dismantle the false narratives piece by piece. He chose not to argue on talk shows or Twitter threads. He chose the cold, unforgiving battleground of the courtroom, where facts matter more than fame. While others ran to media outlets, Depp stayed rooted in truth, gathering evidence, uncovering contradictions, and preparing for the long game. Each public smear against him became an opportunity, another moment where his enemies revealed their own inconsistencies. They mistook his silence for guilt, but he was simply giving them enough rope to hang themselves. By not reacting emotionally, Depp allowed his opponents to overplay their hand, make reckless statements, and expose their own motivations. The more they spoke, the more they unraveled. All the while, Johnny watched, patient and calculating, knowing that his moment would come. When the court proceedings finally began, it became clear that Johnny Depp had not been idle during his time away from the spotlight. He arrived prepared, armed with evidence that painted a far more complicated and credible picture than the simplistic villain narrative the media had tried to sell. Testimonies, recordings, eyewitness accounts, each piece of evidence chipped away at the carefully constructed facade his enemies had erected. The world, which had so hastily judged him, began to see cracks in the story. Public opinion started to shift, not because Depp pleaded for sympathy, but because the sheer weight of the truth made denial impossible. One of the most striking things about Depp's strategy was that he never resorted to the same cruelty that had been used against him. He never publicly humiliated his accusers, never descended into character assassination, never used his platform to belittle those who wronged him. His silence had preserved his dignity, and when he did speak, calmly, factually, and without malice, his words carried the gravity of someone who had suffered deeply but refused to be broken. Audiences could sense it. The authenticity that had made him a beloved actor for decades now made him a symbol of resilience. People didn't just hear Johnny Depp's side of the story. They felt it. While the legal battles raged, Depp also made subtle moves to reclaim his career, but he did so without fanfare. Instead of launching splashy PR campaigns or desperately chasing headlines, he aligned himself with projects that reflected his passion rather than his need for approval. Indie films, music collaborations, art exhibitions. These were not the desperate grasps of a fallen star, but the careful, deliberate choices of a man rebuilding his identity on his own terms. By choosing passion over publicity, Depp reminded the world that his value was never about being Hollywood's golden boy. It was about being an artist who lived and breathed creativity. The turning point came not in a single explosive moment, but gradually, as the public realized that the narrative they had been fed was incomplete, if not outright false. Fans who had once been cautious returned with ferocity, organizing campaigns, trending hashtags, and flooding comment sections with support. Brands that had dropped him quietly reconsidered their positions. Fellow actors who had once remained silent began to voice their support. All of this was not because Johnny Depp had waged a public relations war. It was because he had trusted that, in time, the truth would be undeniable. His silence had not been passive, it had been strategic. In an era obsessed with instant reactions and outrage, Johnny Depp's slow, steady approach was revolutionary. He understood that dignity could be a form of rebellion, that patience could be a weapon. By refusing to become a spectacle, he forced the world to confront its own tendency to rush to judgment. His enemies, who had counted on his collapse, found themselves caught in their own web of contradictions, while Depp quietly, methodically, emerged from the wreckage with his integrity intact. Perhaps the most remarkable part of Johnny Depp's journey is that he never framed himself as a victim. Even when he had every right to do so, he chose instead to present himself as a man who had endured pain and betrayal, but refused to be defined by them. His resilience inspired not pity, but admiration. In doing so, he not only salvaged his career, but elevated his legacy. He became more than just an actor who survived scandal. He became a symbol of perseverance, proof that it's possible to overcome injustice without sacrificing your soul in the process. Today, as Johnny Depp stands poised for a new chapter in his career, it's clear that his strategy of silent resilience has paid off in ways no public feud ever could. His enemies, once so confident in their power to destroy him, have been rendered irrelevant, their credibility eroded not by counterattacks, but by the simple, relentless unfolding of truth. Depp's story is a reminder that sometimes, the loudest, victories are won in silence. That true strength often lies not in shouting over your detractors, but in outlasting them, outsmarting them, and ultimately leaving them to crumble under the weight of their own lies. It is a narrative that feels almost cinematic in its arc. A fallen hero who refuses to beg for redemption, instead choosing to earn it through quiet determination and unshakable self-belief. Johnny Depp's journey shows us that real vindication is not awarded in the court of public opinion, but earned through unwavering integrity. He taught his fans and critics alike that silence can be the sharpest sword, patience, the deadliest. Strategy. His enemies sought to destroy him with noise, but Johnny Depp answered with silence. And in doing so, he outsmarted them all. In the end, Johnny Depp didn't just survive, he transcended. And he did it not by becoming someone else, not by playing the victim or the villain, but by remaining steadfastly himself. His silence wasn't just the absence of words, it was a declaration of faith, in truth, in justice, and in the enduring power of authenticity. Johnny Depp's victory wasn't won in the court of public opinion, or even entirely in the court of law. It was won in the quiet, powerful choice to fight without losing himself. And that, more than anything else, is why his story will be remembered, not as a fall from grace, but as a masterclass in survival, dignity, and triumph against the odds.